Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Sports Insider. I'm Dan Labbe alongside Chris Fedor. As always, a packed show for you, and it is NFL Draft Thursday. 3 days of NFL Draft coming up, Fedor. And, of course, we'll have a live show tonight during round one and again tomorrow during rounds 2 and 3. So check that out starting at 7 tonight. But today, we've got Mary Kay Cabot coming on right off the bat. We're going to talk Cavs and Kevin Love with Joe Vardon. Zack Meisel is going to call in to talk Indians. Bud Shaw is going to have his spinoffs. Like I said, a packed show. Let's get right to it. Let's bring in our Browns beat reporter, Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
I'm doing well. And Mary Kay, we were talking before we came on. There's some folks in the studio, and I am not among them, who do not agree with you that the Browns should do what it takes to go get Marcus Mariota.
Oh, imagine that. We're in disagreement. You know what? I'm just so sick of bad quarterback play. I'm sick of 22 starting quarterbacks. I'm sick of the, Justin Gilberts and the Trent Richardsons and those kind of guys in the first round. Take a chance on one of the best quarterbacks. They have not drafted a quarterback high since Tim Couch. And now somebody will probably say, well, look how that went for them. Well, I actually believe, and Bruce Arians agrees with me, that Tim Couch could have been a good quarterback had he had any kind of talent around him. The Browns keep going for quarterbacks at number 22 when the good ones are mostly gone, and I think it's time to take a chance. Having said that, I don't think they'll pull it off. They don't want to give up the 2016 first-round pick, even though I have advised them to do so. They're not going to listen to me again. I don't think they're going to pull it off. I think the Titans will take Marcus Mariota, and I think that, I do think, however, I will say that, I still think the Browns are going to make another run at Sam Bradford, so there could still be crazy quarterback news today.
Mary Kay, that's what I was going to ask you in terms of just the price for Ray Farmer. Something that he has said in the past really sticks with me, especially on a day like today. He always says, right player, right price. So are you saying the cutoff for him is if Tennessee asks for next year's first-round pick? Is that the deal breaker?
I don't know if it's a deal breaker or not, but I know they don't want to give that up. Who would? I mean, who would want to give up next year's first-round pick, especially considering the schedule they're facing next year? It could be a very, very high pick. But what you have to determine is this. Can this quarterback be elite? Can he be the kind of quarterback that can get you to the playoffs on a consistent basis and win a Super Bowl for you? And if they decide that he is, then what does it matter if you give up a first-round pick that you're probably going to blow next year anyways on some overrated defensive player or something?
Hey, speaking of defensive players, I don't know if he's overrated or not, but Danny Shelton is a guy that, again, a lot of mock drafts are leaning towards him. Is that really the pick at number 12 if the Browns keep that pick, or is there somebody a lot like last year that this team really likes that we don't know about?
Well, I will say I think Ray Farmer does a fantastic job of keeping his lips sealed. He really does. I don't even think that he tells his wife what they're going to do in the draft. I mean, he knows that everybody out there talks, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you just can't trust anybody at this time of year. And it's also kind of making me chuckle a little bit because Mike Pettin's out there chirping like a canary to Andrea Kramer yesterday and today, and Ray's probably like, enough already. Be quiet. But anyways, so Danny Shelton seems to be the consensus pick amongst a lot of experts, although the ESPN mockers, Kuiper and McShay, I believe they have Devontae Parker going to the Browns there at number 12. There could be a surprise pick there at number 12. I'm not exactly sure at this time who that would be, although I have heard that they did spend considerable time with Kevin White the night before his pro day, and that maybe they would even consider moving up a few spots to get a Kevin White. So that's something to keep there on the back burner. But there's so many different things that can happen. It does seem, however, that a lot of people think they'll pick Shelton at number 12.
Mary Kay, you just mentioned Mike Pettin's been chatting with NFL Network's Andrea Kramer. It's the day of the draft, obviously. How much should fans really take into account what Pettin is saying today versus what he said last week or 2 weeks ago or a month ago?
Well, you know what? I have found Mike Pettin to be pretty honest and forthright with what he's saying. So, I think that he's probably just telling it like it is. I never know. I'm always skeptical. I never believe anything anybody says at this time of year. But one of the things that he was really kind of harping on yesterday was, we have not given up on Johnny Manziel, and he showed flashes of brilliance. But I think you have to caution against heading into this draft thinking that Johnny Manziel can be your quarterback of the future. I don't think you should pass up on a Marcus Mariota or the chance to get him based on the notion that you think Johnny can be your guy. Because the truth of the matter is, nobody knows if Johnny can be a successful NFL quarterback. In fact, I've talked to several people that have had close associations with Johnny Manziel that really don't think that he has what it takes. Nobody knows for sure. I still think if you have a chance at one of the best quarterbacks, the elite quarterbacks in this draft, take the chance. If you fail, you know what? Worse things have happened to the Browns, and I just don't think it's that huge of a risk.
Mary Kay, there are three guys that I keep going back to that could make sense for the Browns at 12 or number 19, but they all have baggage. Collins, the offensive lineman from LSU, Shane Ray, the outside linebacker from Missouri, Nebraska's Randy Gregory. Those are areas that the Browns could obviously look at in the first round, but given what happened with Josh Gordon and what has happened with Johnny Manziel, do you anticipate the Browns staying away from guys like that, the guys with the baggage?
No, I don't, actually. I think this is a team, they've said it all offseason. We are not going to overreact to the fact that we had issues with guys last year. We're going to continue to evaluate it on a player-by-player basis. Now, I've been hearing that teams are starting to shy away from a Randy Gregory while teams aren't so much shying away from a Shane Ray. Now, what you have to determine is the toe going to be okay? People don't seem overly concerned about the marijuana possession, but so I don't know. I think the very unfortunate thing here is the Browns really need a pass rusher. I think they do. I think they need another pass rusher, and I like getting pass rushers high in the draft. If the production has been there in college and you think that they're a slam dunk. So I think it's very unfortunate that you might have to take a Randy Gregory off the board. Although I have seen some mocks projecting the Browns to take him, I think they'll evaluate it again. And if a guy has a minor misdemeanor of marijuana possession, I don't think that would preclude the Browns from taking him.
Mary Kay, this is a little broader question beyond the draft, but when you look at Mike Pettin, a guy who's kind of known as a player's coach, but also a disciplined guy, is he one of those coaches that feels like, with character problems, is he a coach who feels like he can fix guys?
Well, I think as an organization, the Browns feel that they can take on some guys that are, less than perfect and surround them with a good support system. But they did too much of that last year. They didn't do a good enough job of vetting their players, and they brought too many issues onto the team. And now they do have to be more judicious about that, and they will. They've taken measures to make sure that, hey, you know what? Like I said before, if a guy has a minor issue with marijuana, it's very common that football players smoke marijuana. I mean, that is nothing new. If it doesn't seem to be a problem and they otherwise have good character, maybe you can take a chance on a guy like that. So, you know what? I don't think necessarily that Mike Pettin thinks he can fix them, but I do think, like the Bengals, the Browns, this regime is one that feels that they can take on some issues.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, joining us on Sports Insider. And Mary Kay, we'll talk to you a few times probably tonight during our live draft show as well. So thanks for the time.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
She mentioned the Bengals, by the way. And at the Combine, Marvin Lewis actually said when he first took that job, he felt like he could fix guys. And then he said, you know what, I don't have time to fix guys. And so they stopped taking guys like that.
Right.
I think that's an interesting kind of juxtaposition there. And the bottom line is, it's not about does he smoke marijuana. It's about what are you doing getting caught the week of the draft?
Yeah, you dummy.
Marijuana.
I mean, hello, you got to be on your best behavior leading up to the draft. Even Johnny Manziel found a way to stay out of trouble leading up to the NFL draft. But you're right, Dan. I don't think anybody is going to mistake the Browns for the Ravens here. I don't think the Browns have the kind of culture that is just like Baltimore's or Pittsburgh's or Cincinnati's. And until they do, I still think it's more of a risk for the Browns than other teams to take guys like that.
All right, let's go ahead and talk Cavaliers and bring in part of our Cavaliers team, Joe Vardon. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys.
And Joe, I got to ask you, do you trade up for Marcus Mariota?
I mean, if you're the Browns and you believe in him, sure. For dating back to '99, the issue has always been quarterback, to the point where they try to fix it when there are other problems that need to be fixed. It would be interesting to see if they shored up every other spot, conceivable spot on the roster, and had just a guy that can, just can get them from point A to point B and see how many games they can win that way. I'm not sure that they've ever tried that strategy. I would expect them to do this, knowing the Browns, but I guess we'll see.
All right, Joe, let's talk Cavaliers. There will be no Willis Reed moment for Kevin Love. They announced last night he'll be out 4 to 6 months. There's the picture now on Instagram of him in the hospital wearing the Indians hat that everybody feels good-ish about. So now that we know for sure Kevin Love is done for the playoffs, does that change anything about how this team was feeling about going forward without him?
No, I don't think so, Dan. I mean, I certainly felt like he was done for the playoffs. I mean, if you just look at all of the things that was wrong with his shoulder when they announced that on Monday night, those are just not things you come back from quickly. And just reading and talking to, some of the doctors who, do these kinds of surgeries and who also just, who can kind of opine on this kind of injury, it didn't seem like it was something he would come back from this playoff. So, no, I don't think it affects them. I mean, what we're waiting to see is if this injury is like kind of a galvanizing moment, or if it's something that, that really kind of affects the psyche of this team. And I don't know that it has been a galvanizing moment yet, but it also might be too early for that. There might just be that moment between now and when the ball goes up in the air Monday when they all come together and just say, okay, this is what we have now, this is what we have to do. But, we'll see as time goes on.
Joe, when you talk about the Cavs and moving forward here, I felt going into this series against Chicago or Milwaukee that Love was the second most important player behind LeBron James, just given what he can do in the way that he dictates what the Chicago or Milwaukee defense can do against the Cavs. So if it's not going to be Love, you can't say LeBron, you can't say Kyrie Irving. Give me a guy that you think is going to step up and have a big series for the Cavs.
Well, I think that when they traded for Iman Shumpert back on January 5th, they had this in mind for him, getting onto the wing, playing defense, and contributing as a scorer. And now, of course, that is not precisely how the season has gone for him here. He's coming off the bench. He does play defense, like he scores a little, but it's the role that he has filled and done it admirably is not the role they envisioned for him when they traded for him. They thought he was going to be their starter and was really going to kind of change how they looked defensively. So I'm going to go there, and I know that Iman or that J.R. Smith is only going to miss 2 games. But this will be really interesting to see how this plays out. If Iman Shumpert comes out and plays great in games 1 and 2, and let's say the Cavs get one or both of them, then I think that David Blatt has a decision on his hands. I really do. Because then, you would have somebody who could spread the floor and shoot coming off the bench in J.R. Smith. And we know, traditionally that that's what you like to do with a shooter, kind of a shooter like him. He's almost better off the bench. It gives your team a different look when you're resting some of your starters. And he's also a great changeup. Now, JR has just fit wonderfully as a starter this year. Of course, we know that. But that was with Kevin, and that was, that was when the team played a certain way. I mean, David, Blatt, and LeBron have been saying for days now that they are going to have to change a little bit who they are and what they do, and that would be one way.
What about James Jones versus Tristan Thompson when it comes to the starting lineup? Do you get a sense of the way that David Blatt is leaning here?
Yeah, I don't. I really don't have the sense, and I think that's kind of by design. It's hard to tell which way he would be leaning. I mean, if you think about when Kevin couldn't play in Los Angeles on the second night of the back-to-back against the Clippers way back in January, I thought the Cavs were really good that night, and Tristan started. And, he had a heck of a game. He scored the winning basket. But he did a bunch of stuff before making that winning basket. And, it's only one game. It's in January. That's a million years ago. But I liked that team. I liked what I saw there. James Jones, I mean, he's been a rotation player. Really, he has up until the playoffs. And, he's played a little bit in the playoffs, and it hasn't gone well. He can still give them help. I don't know about him as the starter. Just because you want your starters to do so many different things. But they, if they feel like their best answer is to go small and they feel like they want to continue to spread the floor, obviously it's easier to do that with James Jones on the floor than Tristan Thompson. I just, for what it's worth, guys, I would prefer that they go with Shumpert and Thompson and change their style a little bit and be more of a bruising club. Let Kyrie be the one who kind of stretches the floor, which he can do. Let LeBron kind of be a hybrid player like he was in 2012 when he was in almost this exact situation. And just take it to, whoever it is with their athleticism. LeBron's a heck of an athlete. Kyrie is. Iman Shumpert is. Mozgov is, a load at 7 foot. And Tristan has proved, highly capable. So play that way. See what happens.
Joe, how much of LeBron as power forward are we going to see in this next series?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing that everyone just goes to, in something like this. They say, well, LeBron's the 4 now. And that's true to a degree, but he still handles the ball a lot. I mean, so, when you say a 4, you're saying, well, he's setting up on the block, and he is the screener on the top of the key pick and roll. And he did do more of that when Kevin went out on Sunday, but the ball stays in LeBron's hands. And so, I think you're going to see some more of it, but not exclusively. I mean, there's going to be times where they want LeBron dribbling the ball up top. There's going to be other times where they want him set up on the wing. And, there are other options there, of course, whether it be James or Tristan or whoever. So, more, but not exclusively.
All right, that's Joe Vardon, and Joe's getting ready, just like the Cavaliers, for round 2. It's going to start on Monday against either Chicago or Milwaukee. We may have an answer to that question tonight. Joe, thanks for the time.
Hey, anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right, LeBron James as power forward. I'm actually a little too excited about that. I don't want to see it for 40 minutes a game, but there's 2 positions I love watching LeBron play for stretches: point guard and power forward.
And here's the thing. It can work against Chicago.
Yeah.
It absolutely can work against Chicago because Joakim Noah is an offensive liability.
And he's banged up, too.
Yeah.
He does not look like Joakim Noah.
Not anything near himself.
It'll be interesting. Tonight, Chicago and Milwaukee.
It's the beauty of LeBron, though. It really is. The fact that you've got a guy here, Dan, that can play 1 through 4. If you lose a guy like Kevin Love, you're saying, well, we're just going to replace him with a guy who, if he played power forward, could probably be a top 5 power forward in the NBA.
Yeah, he's a specimen.
He's the ultimate trump card, is he not?
All right, let's talk Indians now. We bring in Zack Meisel joining us. And Zack, before we get to the Indians, how's your mock draft?
I'm on mock draft 34.5 right now. I'll have that wrapped up soon. I'll let you guys know who I like. The Browns will take at 12 and 19.
Did Michael Bourne make the first round?
No, he originally was, but we had to move him down towards the bottom of the draft.
Hamstring issues?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Zack. Trevor Bauer the other night, he said something has to change soon. Really, then, as you wrote it, expletive soon, or else it's going to be a long season. That's really the first time we've heard an Indians player or anyone in the Indians organization kind of show that sort of desperation this season. Was it something that this organization and this team had to hear?
Yeah, I think it was. And if you remember back to last year, the Indians got off to a similarly slow start. They were 11 and 17 at the end of April. And the mantra was, it's early and things will turn around. And we won 92 games last year. And it'll be fine. And they said that into June and July. And it ended up that it wasn't too early when they thought it was too early. It was just they waited too long to turn things around. And I think this year they realized they can't be that patient. They can't rest on their laurels like that. And I think, I don't know who the leader is on this team. Jason Giambi was the guy who provided that veteran leadership the last 2 years. He's gone. Nick Swisher might be a vocal leader, but he's rehabbing. So I think it was nice and kind of refreshing to hear 24-year-old Trevor Bauer come out and say something like that. And yeah, they won a game now finally, but maybe that is the turning point. Maybe we'll look back and say, hey, this team needed to show some fire. This team needed to show a sense of urgency, and who knew that it would be Trevor Bauer to be the one to spark that?
Right, and I think that makes sense, but how do you think the players in the clubhouse are handling it coming from Trevor Bauer? Because me covering the Cavs, if Iman Shumpert would have said something like that instead of a guy like LeBron or Kyrie, the leaders of the team, I think the players would have been like, really? Really, flat top? That's what you're going to say? So how do you think the players in the clubhouse are handling Trevor coming out and being that guy?
I think this is different, though. I think you look in that clubhouse, and who would you point to as a leader? I think Jason Kipnis would be a guy you would think, because he's been around for a while, but he was awful last year and is off to a slow start this year. Michael Bourne's never really been a vocal guy. Corey Kluber and Michael Brantley are maybe the two faces of the franchise, but they're pretty quiet with the way they go about their business. And you look at the statistics, and Trevor Bauer has probably been this team's MVP so far. So I think he pretty much has the right to say that kind of thing. And it's not like he's a rookie. He's been around this club for 3 years now. And I think, really, I think that the guys are just refreshed to hear someone take initiative and someone kind of light a fire under these guys. Because Terry Francona held a team meeting after Monday's loss, and he had some things to say. But, you know, how much does that hold? How much merit does that hold? Francona's been around a while, but he's a guy that shows a lot of patience, and he can be stubborn. And, I mean, he's admitted he keeps guys at their spots in the lineup way too long, even if they're struggling. I mean, sometimes you hear the same things over and over. So if you hear a young guy speak out for the first time and it surprises you, that could be a good thing.
Zach, the Indians, of course, have coughed up some leads late, and last night they got exactly what they needed out of Zach McAllister. 2 innings, 1 hit, no runs. He got him to Cody Allen, who, you know, had kind of a Cody Allen-ish save, but a save nonetheless. Is this Zach McAllister's role moving forward now?
I think it should be. I think when you think about it, the way Terry Francona uses his bullpen, at least last year and the year before, he's rotating through these guys, using 4 or 5 in a game, guys coming in for just one batter, playing matchup baseball, which is good. That puts guys in the best position to succeed usually. But you're also then relying on 4 or 5 guys every single night to perform. And with a bullpen, especially year to year, that it's just impossible to predict how reliable it's going to be. So when you have a guy like McAllister, and you can bring him in and he can handle 2 innings, he can go through that lineup more than once if he has to. If he's on his game, you only have to rely on him and maybe one other reliever instead of having to go to Dubchinsky and Hagedorn and Shaw and Etchton. I mean, it's a lot easier to rely on 1 or 2 guys who are doing the job well than 4 or 5, especially with the rocky start that this group has had. So to have McAllister there throwing 2 solid innings like he did last night, if they can get that more often, that's going to be a big boost to the bullpen.
Zach, I got to believe after the scare of Michael Brantley early in the season with the back injury that the Indians are feeling pretty good that he looks like the guy who was in the running for MVP last year.
Yeah, it's incredible because, I mean, a back injury, anyone who's had one knows those things linger. And especially when it's cold outside, that it doesn't just go away. And he's had this since the off season. It keeps coming back. And he was feeling it in Detroit last weekend, and yet he had 7 hits in 2 games. And maybe he doesn't have the power that he had last year because he's not able to, you know, uncork his back the way he normally would during a swing. But he's still able to just fight it off the other way for a single or hit a double down the line. I mean, the guy is just such a good hitter. And Terry Francona said he could, even when he's not in midseason form, he can roll out of bed and get you 3 hits if you need it. So, yeah, for an offense that has struggled mightily for the first 20 games, it's really nice to have him in that 3-hole doing what he does.
All right, Zach, here it is, the Francisco Lindor question of the week.
I was letting you take that one.
Jose Ramirez really hasn't been setting the world on fire with his bat, and defensively, he's been a little more of a concern than I think people expected him to be. Are there any rumblings right now that maybe this team is looking to get a spark out of a guy like Lindor?
There should be. We pressed General Manager Chris Antonetti on it at the start of the week, and Antonetti kind of dodged the questions, wouldn't really answer what Lindor still needs to work on. And that's either he doesn't have much to work on and they're just biding their time and they don't want to have to pay him more right away, or he really does have things to work on and they just didn't want to get into it. I find that a little hard to believe. A lot of people want him, he's only played about 60 games at AAA and want him to get more seasoning. That's great. Jose Ramirez only played 60 games at AAA too, so they've got about the same service time when it comes to the minor leagues. And I think maybe Francisco Lindor doesn't come up here and set the world on fire. Maybe he struggles out of the gates, but he probably wouldn't give you less than Jose Ramirez is giving you right now. And I think it would show that team that guys in the clubhouse, hey, we're going to make some moves and we're going to do what it takes to win and to find the right group here. We're not just going to be stagnant and wait around for you guys to get hot. So it could send the right message. It's tough to tell if Lindor is ready. I don't think you really ever know. I don't think you know just by looking at the statistics, and he's been hitting pretty well over the last week, but it's tough to tell. All I know is Jose Ramirez has really, really struggled. Jose Ramirez is young, too. He's only 22 years old, so it's not like you're dealing with a veteran who's been around and is established. I think if you did promote Lindor, I don't think it would be a bad time to do so, and I've kind of called for it in what I've written on cleveland.com this week, but it would make sense, especially the way the team is playing. Maybe it would provide a spark, and they really have nothing to lose.
All right, Zach, thanks for the time.
No problem, guys. Thank you.
All right, that's Zack Meisel, and now it's Bud Shaw time.
All right, guys, thanks. I couldn't help but think of Phil Savage this week. He really should be here. Not to find the Browns a quarterback. After all, he did draft Brady Quinn. No, Savage should be here to see how far this city has come since the days when he felt the need to lecture us on our woe is me mentality. I'm pretty sure that was before his first big free agent signing with Charles Bentley, ended his career on the first snap of training camp, and probably before his power struggle with John Collins, in which he lost his job, then got it back. But still, point well taken. It may even have been before he suggested a harassing fan change his allegiance and support a team from another city, or words to that effect. Well, Savage should see us now. Here we are in a week when Kevin Love is not only gone from the playoff picture, but gone under the knife and is facing a 4 to 6 month recovery period. Our first comment says that even the Love injury is no real reason to lose hope. He says the media and some fans underestimate how elite athletes like LeBron James and Kyrie Irving accept this kind of challenge and rise up. So there you have it. That's a start. No woe is me there. More like woe is Chicago or Milwaukee or whoever else might stand in the way of this juggernaut. Phil would be proud. And here we are in a week that brings us to a Browns draft run by a GM who has lost the confidence of the fan base, in part because of last year's draft. A GM who faces a 4-game suspension once the season begins. But are people expecting the worst? Well, not everybody. Not Factory 14, who reminds us that the 10 picks the Browns have will go a long way to cementing a successful future. The Browns, too, he says, are on the rise. Are you feeling this, Dan, Chris? You feeling the spirit? Feeling the love?
Right up to the top.
Phil, if only you could see us now. If only, hold on a second. This comment just in. The Titanic is boarding at the Lake Erie docks, writes Polar Bear. All aboard. Given the name of this commenter, I guess we can always hope this is a climate change reference and has nothing to do with sports at all. Well, in the meantime, let's see what they're saying about the Indians, whose record fell to 6-13 at one point this week and 1-6 at home. Both numbers were last seen in 1987, which, coincidentally or not, was also the last time Sports Illustrated put them on the cover and predicted great things for them. So how do people feel about the Indians? Writes Captain 67, quote, tribe management reminds me of the ROTC guy at the end of Animal House yelling, all is well, while he is run over by throngs of people. Okay, I guess old habits die harder than I thought in this town, but I do sense more optimism in tough times, which is only appropriate. Did we give up when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
It's a very good point, Bud.
Thanks, Chris.
I'm going to read you a tweet from Doug Lesmerises.
Oh,
this goes
no.
back to the conversation we had.
Does this have anything to do with me?
One.
Okay.
Number one.
All right.
Do you think the Browns need a franchise quarterback to be very good?
To be very good?
Yeah. Eventually, in the next 2 to 3 years.
What's
Okay.
the definition
Number
of very
two.
good?
Number
Go
two,
ahead.
I would assume making the playoffs. Every year.
Okay.
Number two, if yes, how and when are you ever going to get that guy?
You're really going to bang this Mariota thing all night, aren't you?
Well, isn't the better question, do you believe Marcus Mariota
Well,
is a
that's
franchise
yeah, that's
quarterback?
also
And I
the
don't believe
question
he
as
is.
well. All right. So that's why you don't want to go
Exactly.
get him. But if you believed he was, if Ray Farmer believes he is,
All right. Well, where's your breaking point then? So they want next year's number one and next year's number two. He's a franchise quarterback.
I would not give up next year's number two.
You would draw the line at number
Yes.
two.
I wouldn't give up my entire first 2 days of the draft.
Chris, please take this.
Wait a minute. If you think the guy is good enough and you think he's going to be a franchise quarterback, you're letting a second-round pick in next year's draft stand in your way of that? You're going to go so far, and then you're going to stop at the number two.
Wouldn't you do a Ditka if you really thought he was that guy?
If you think he's that guy, yeah, I mean, you got to get him.
You got to go Ditka. You're going Ditka.
Maybe. I'd think about it. I'd entertain it.
What does that mean? What kind of opinion is that? I'd entertain it. I'd think about making that phone call, but
Well,
I
you're
don't
on the
know.
clock. You've got 13 more minutes to entertain it.
If Ray Farmer thinks he's a franchise quarterback,
Okay.
then yes, he should pull out all the stops to go get him.
All the stops.
All right. Yeah.
This just
Wow.
in. The Tennessee Titans now want your third next year, too.
How are you going to do? All right. If you pass on a guy that you think is a franchise quarterback,
Yeah.
you say, no, we don't want to give him up.
Yeah.
And you draft Danny Shelton,
Well,
and you draft.
Say that again.
I don't know.
Say that dismissively again. Danny Shelton.
Well,
Like,
I'm just saying, is a nose tackle going to get you to the playoffs every year?
it's not going to have the same kind of impact. You're absolutely right about that. If Mariota was available at 12 and I didn't have to sacrifice pick after pick after pick after pick, then maybe I'd consider
What
that.
did Baltimore
But
do?
he's not available
Baltimore
at 12.
got Haloti Ngata before they got Flacco, and then they
that's
picked
true.
Flacco where he was, where he came
Actually,
to them.
yeah, and here's the other thing, Dan. If you're talking about a team that would make more sense to move up for Marcus Mariota, to me it's Philadelphia because the other pieces around the quarterback are better off. The Browns are in a Washington-type situation where they don't have all those other pieces around him. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to need some of those picks to get some wide receivers for the guy, or maybe a running back for the guy, or maybe some more defensive linemen to stop the run, those kinds of things.
Dan, we accept your apology.
No, I'm standing
The
by
real
it.
question is, what would Phil Savage do? Would he
Phil
trade up for
Savage. Very good
Marcus
question.
Mariota?
Phil Savage would go.
And that's
"Oh,
why I wanted him here this week. See how we brought that back?
Yes, right.
Okay.
I still think you go get the guy.
Phil would say, bleep you, go root for Philadelphia.
Because you can fill your need at nose tackle. You can fill your need
Okay.
at receiver. You can fill all those needs. You still got your need at quarterback.
You got
It's
all-
not like quarterback is not a need.
Oh, yeah, it's the biggest need. There's no
Right?
question about that.
Would you do all of this, jump through all of these hoops for Winston also?
Oh, for Winston? Yeah.
Okay.
Dan's like, I'll give
Next year,
2018,
number
2019.
I know we have the off the field and character concerns with Winston. I get that, but I mean, I think Fedor would too. If we're talking Jameis Winston.
If we're talking Jameis instead of Mariota, I'd do the damn thing.
I'd be there with you.
Yeah, I'd do the damn thing.
You know
Not
what
for
You
Mariota.
know what I don't want? Josh McCown and Johnny Manziel. That's what I don't want.
Well, you still have the possibility of Thad Lewis and Connor Shaw, so there you go.
All right.
You know, the Browns might not want the Josh McCown, Johnny Manziel thing because right now they are looked at as the buffoons in the NFL that traded up for Johnny Manziel last year.
That's true.
There's one way that they could change that.
Also
They
traded
could
up for
become-
Brandon Whedon, correct?
Right, that's right. They could become the buffoons that traded up for Marcus Mariota.
Did they also trade
difference,
up
though-
for Brady Quinn?
Did they? Yeah, I think they did.
They did. They
yeah,
traded,
with
actually
Dallas.
traded their first round pick. But the difference is, when you talk about Brandon Whedon, and you talk
Yes.
about Johnny Manziel, when you talk about Brady Quinn, you're talking about second tier guys.
Okay.
And I think we'd all agree that Marcus Mariota is in that first tier of guys in this draft.
That's because there are only two.
You don't believe
That's
Ray
right.
Farmer then when he said that Johnny Manziel was his #1 rated quarterback?
No.
Okay.
The $100,000 examination says otherwise.
The #1 rated quarterback named Johnny? Perhaps.
Well, are we going to be talking about all this tonight also?
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to be fun.
Dan's not going to
7
let it go.
o'clock. Make the move. Do something exciting. Don't pick a nose tackle. That's it for Sports Insider. Thanks to Mary Kay Cabot, Joe Vardon, Zack Meisel, of course, Bud Shaw. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe.